Hello YouTube, Jonathan here, and it's time to discuss Soviet strategies for this game of Axis and Allies Europe 1941, or Axis and Allies Europe Classic, whatever you want to call it. This is the second version of Axis and Allies to be widely released. I'm not counting the old Nova version from, I don't know when, like 1981. Classic, I'm counting that as the first version, and this being the second one. So there are a few things to go over. This is going to be a brief recap if you've already watched the Germany video. Germany goes first. But if this is the first video that you're tuning in for in this series, just a couple of things. The price of units is different than maybe you're used to if you have started playing a more recent version. This is the first version where artillery are in the game. It is also the first version where destroyers are in the game. There are no cruisers, but destroyers do attack and defend at a 3. They just don't get the coastal bombardment. Transports also defend at 1 and can be taken as casualties, so that changes things a little bit. Where we are in history is right before Germany invades the Soviet Union. They have massive U-boat assets over here and are in a position to potentially wipe out the entire British Atlantic Navy and the American Navy over there, as well as this destroyer down here. The only navy England is likely to have after Germany's first turn is this over here. And Germany is positioning itself in Libya to start marching into the oil-rich Middle East. The way the Middle East works is you see those IPC, those production values there. There's 8 production total in the Middle East. And whatever Germany has, Germany being the only Axis power, Italy not being a playable country in the core version of this game, for every IPC value in the Middle East that Germany has, the Allies, whether that's just one of them or all of them combined or somehow they split it, must give Germany that number of IPCs. So not only would it be a gain for Germany, it would then be a loss for the combined Allies. So, in thinking about the Germany video, and I only say this to give context to the situation the Soviet Union will find itself in, the Germans are going to attack. Maybe they attack the first turn. I don't recommend it. I recommend going just after this tank to take that out, pushing all of your fodder, your infantry and artillery forward, and then getting all these tanks that are kind of, spaced way out over here to the front so that you're ready to go. So that's the situation the Soviet Union is likely to find itself in on the first turn. We know that Germany is going to have overwhelming force, so no matter what we put on the front, it's going to get destroyed. If for some reason we make a stack of infantry so large Germany is a little wary, they can just go around it. There are plenty of places for them to attack. So let's say that for some reason maybe we moved these infantry from Belarus into East Ukraine, infantry from Ukraine up there, same thing with the artillery. That tank's probably going to be destroyed, but we zip this tank from Moscow up there as well, getting as much as we can. Germany could still decide to attack it, and they probably could wipe it out because they have a massive, massive army here. Or they could just say, oh, I don't want to attack that stack of infantry. I would much rather force you to attack me, so your infantry attack at 1s instead of defending at 2s. So instead of hitting you here, I'm just going to go around you here, or maybe I'm going to go around you this way. And Germany has the opportunity to do that right at the front because of the number of territories along here. It also means that if we try to defend everything, we certainly don't have enough units for that. We're just going to get overrun. But what we can do is move all of our border units back. So anything that borders Germany, which would include Ukraine, unfortunately, we're just going to move it back because we know that Germany can hit us with overwhelming force. Now, if Germany decides it wants to attack with, wants to use tanks and go 2 spaces in, then it's separating its tanks from all of its fodder, and we can easily counterattack those tanks and just wipe them out. So we are going to move our guys back. Leningrad, we'll leave just enough guys here because all they have to attack are infantry, and this can't be hit by this transport. Unless they do something weird with the positioning. It's unlikely that they will. We also have this navy up here. We could maybe take out a sub or do something useful with that, depending on what the naval situation looks like. But as far as land goes, we're going to put just enough here to keep it defended from those infantry on the border. We're going to heavily fortify Leningrad, and we're going to fortify Belorussia here, and then Stalingrad as well. This will prevent the Germans from taking our cities if they double move in with tanks. And that's going to put us in a position where we can counterattack. So we can see if, for example, the Germans are strong in Baltic, now we have a massive force in Leningrad and Belorussia that we can use to counterattack them. Or we could move from Belorussia next turn into Leningrad to try and stop them, stall another round, leave somebody here so they can't blitz through, build up in Moscow. They move to Belorussia, we hit them from Leningrad and from Moscow on the next turn. Down here in Ukraine, it's a similar idea. We've got guys in two territories. We maybe put a bunch of guys down here into Stalingrad. We can counter them here. Let's see. So that is an option for us. We could also decide we want to pull back into Leningrad. It isn't quite as synergistic as up here, but we could pull back here after stalling for a turn, dump more guys here, start moving guys down this way if Germany is making a push over here. Now, it is bad for the Allies, for obvious reasons, if the Germans get into the Middle East down here. It is worse, however, if they are able to take Moscow. So, if given the choice, so let's say that Germany divides its forces into two primary attacks. We want to be more heavily focused on this one. If we can get Germany to divert more forces this way so that it starts going down here, then that's a win for us, because in this game, the Allies have a huge economic advantage. So Germany starts with 40 IPCs. The US alone starts with 40 IPCs. And then you also have England, which has 30, and the Soviet Union, which has another 24. So the Allies combined have more than double Germany's production. So Russia is really about stalling. And so by putting yourself in positions where you can more effectively counterattack, or you can delay the Germans a turn as they get farther and farther away from their base of operations, their new units, and deeper into where you can just dump down a bunch of units all at once, that is better for you as long as you are able to keep your capital. That is going to be your number one goal. Your number 2 and 3 goals are keeping one or both, or one or all three, because you've got another factory up there. As many of your factories as possible, and then the Middle East. But you don't want to lose your capital for the sake of attaining either of those other two goals. The capital is the goal. Forcing Germany in a position where they start diverting more forces to a secondary goal, to another one of your other cities, or to the Middle East, and stop putting as much pressure up here. That is what you want to do whenever you have the opportunity, and then you're just going to wait for England and the US to slowly get into the war. They aren't going to have much. The US, literally, after their first turn, is going to have a couple infantry and a couple planes. England is going to have a little bit more, but still not much. So it's going to take them a couple turns to really get going. Russia needs to hold out. If Germany leaves itself vulnerable, maybe they are attacking in more than two spaces. Maybe they decide they're going to split up their army fairly evenly, and they're going to hit Baltic, Eastern Poland, and Ukraine all at once. And maybe they try and go after Leningrad, and hopefully they don't take Leningrad on turn 1 or 2 because you fortified it. But maybe they're hitting multiple spots, so that means they're more spread out. You can pick, if there's a weaker stack, to try and counterattack that one. Let the other two go. Maybe counterattack counterattack the weakest one if you don't have the forces to counterattack more than one, which you probably won't. And if they're all relatively equal, then you want to try and counterattack the one that is going to get to Moscow the fastest, because if it takes the other two an additional turn to get there, that's an additional turn for you to build up your forces over here. So that is the Soviet Union, very concentrated over here. A lot of infantry, a few tanks, a handful of tanks. Don't forget about your navy up here. It isn't much, and you may not be able to do a ton with it, but just make sure you take a look at it and see if there is something that you can do. Even if it's just kind of moving it out to get it out of there, or maybe there's a German sub somewhere that you can try and take out. Remember, you can use that transport to take a hit if you want to. So that is the Soviet Union in Axis and Allies Europe. I'll be making one more video on this series looking at England and the US. I'm going to go ahead and combine them just because they are very unlikely to have much to work with on the first turn. So we will consider what they might do to try and build up, and then ultimately what their strategies are going to be.